The weekly roundup number 22, once again with Starlight Pumpkins as my guest today.
Howdy, howdy, everybody.
We have news for you today. It was kind of a slow news week, I must say. Not too much happened this week, but
Trump was pretty funny this week.
what's that?
Trump was pretty funny this week.
Well, he's
It's funny. It's funny because he's on his truth. I think on his true whatever his social network is. It's kind
yeah,
of just funny seeing his all caps rants.
I know. You know, I'm not on it, so I don't see him, and I'm not on. I could look it up, I guess, but I only hear about it when the media wants me to hear about it. So, but I do know he just goes off on tangents and everything, especially because he's being indicted and whatnot, and so it should be pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think we're on the third round of indictments now at this point.
Yeah. And at the end of the show, we'll be talking about that a little bit. We have a story on that. But for now, what we've got is we've got the polls here for our primaries. So I want to take a look at that and take a look at the polls in general, just for President Biden and some other goodies. So the first poll that we have is I want to take a look at Biden's disapproval. And it seems to be inching up. And I have a feeling it's because of the gas prices.
Inching up as in more disapproval or less disapproval?
Inching up as far as his disapproval rating is growing.
Okay,
So,
gotcha.
yeah. So he was at a solid... He couldn't get... It was about, just over 50, 52. And now we're seeing several polls that are... this one from CNN, his disapproval rate is 58. This one from YouGov, disapproval is 56. There's one from CBS, his disapproval is 60.
Ooh.
55 from Gallup. I mean, this is just... But, that doesn't necessarily correlate, again, into Republicans having bigger numbers, because as we can see, these polls here show a tie between Trump and Biden for 43% each. Morning Consult has Biden ahead by 3 points, ahead of Trump, and ahead of DeSantis by 6 points. So
Wait, back that up. So it says
sure.
Biden is ahead of DeSantis by 6 points.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. And so we've got that going on as well. And so I've been kind of saying, I just don't... I don't know how... Well, first of all, once the candidate is chosen, a lot of that, support will fall behind one candidate, I would imagine. And so there will be a bump. But you would think that with a disapproval rate this high, and it's been stubbornly high, it has not changed. You would think that, Biden would kind of be in panic mode, especially with two primary challengers. And granted, the primary challengers have no chance, but I don't know. So let me get your take on this. And as of right now, what do you predict, or what do you see happening as we kind of move forward with the primaries?
For the Democratic primary?
Well, let's start with the Republican one, because the Democrat primary, we know Papa Biden's going to run away with it, but we have to pretend that, there is one. But we'll do that in a minute.
For the Republican primary, I think Trump is going to come out as the candidate. because I just have a feeling with all these indictments going on, I feel like that's going to really supercharge the Republican base to try to get Trump back into office. I think it's just really going to unite them behind him. I think it's going to just backfire on the Democrats. What are your thoughts on the thing I predicted? Do you think it would be a benefit to him?
Well, I think that what it does is it shores up a lot of Republican voters, because a lot of Republican voters are going to feel like, oh, they're going after Trump, so they kind of take it personally. They're going after me, kind of a thing. And I think a lot of Republican voters, that, especially the ones that voted for Trump and, are like behind Trump, always take it as, like the deep state is, out to get them, and they're going to be extremely, like persecuted, like the longer that Biden kind of remains in office, and a lot of them will obviously feel that the election was unfair, and all this other stuff. But what I really see is, I think that a lot of people, though they disapprove, of Biden, in the Republican primary in general, if Trump wins, I think that there's enough voters that are of the non-persuaded Trump base, like somebody like me, for instance, that aren't going to go out and vote for Trump. I have no intention of holding my nose and voting for Trump. He'd really have to, do some convincing, and as I mentioned, his 2020 was a disaster. So I wouldn't, at this point, I don't know what he could say or do to get someone like me. So I think on a candidate like Trump, they lose a lot of people like me. And it's not that I go and vote for Biden. It's just that I just stay home. But as far as the other candidates as well, a lot of the Trump-based voters feel the same way about the other candidates that I do about Trump, which is why I think that Biden has a super advantage going into 2024.
Sorry, there was a jump on the webcam there. Is everything okay?
Yeah.
Okay. How do you... Oh, continue on.
I was just going to say, Mog says Trump voters are a cult of blind faith. Thanks, Mog. It depends
on how you want to really describe blind faith, because like a lot of the Trump base, they felt abandoned by just the political climate in America, and they just see someone who finally gives them attention, and they just rally behind them, because it's a lot of middle rural America. It's just absolutely decayed right now. Like there's just, I feel like a lot of people kind of like on Twitch, on the internet in general, they kind of live in a bubble, because just so many towns and cities across America are just dying, and just people are more fleeing toward more kind of just mega cities like New York, Boston, like those kind of areas.
Well,
and honestly, it's like the one thing Trump said is really true to potential voters in 2016 is, what do you have to lose? And at this point, people have nothing left to lose at this point. Like, we were headed towards total economic collapse.
Right. Well, the thing about I think the appeal behind Trump is that kind of everyman. I mean, yeah, he's a billionaire, but he's got that confidence that he displays.
I'd also like to add, he's a billionaire, but he doesn't really rub shoulders with other elites, so to speak. Like a lot of high society, they despise Trump. He's an outsider in that regard.
Right. And a lot of people looked back at like some of the older stuff, because obviously before Trump ran for president, I mean, he was admired by a lot of people that now hate him. One example being, when he was doing The Apprentice. I mean, that was a huge show back in, I don't even know, like what, 2012 or 2011, something like that. And so he was doing that, and people loved it, and people from all political walks of life watched it. You never heard anything about grab him by the pussy, which is a video that, what was it, ABC? Or who sat on that for years? It was from 2005, wasn't it? That was released after 11 years. Like, they just found it with that guy. I can't remember his name. And he got fired. Like, he got fired immediately. He's probably like, this comment was made, like, 11 years ago, and you're fired. I didn't even make it, and you're firing. Oh, NBC. Thank you, Ming. Pretty unbelievable, I would say. And so people see this, and it reveals a lot of, the flaws in the system, I would say, that people are angry with. They feel like they don't have any power. They feel like they don't have, any type of recourse. They see that as soon as Trump says that he's going to run for president, they go back and they dig this stuff up, and they find it, and they say, this is what we need. Like, this is what we need to essentially bury you with all this evidence. And a lot of the other side, they still get outraged by that kind of stuff, especially because we do live in an outrage mentality society where things like Twitter outrage on there gets attention and likes and, things that get the endorphins flowing, essentially. So I think that really appeals to a lot of the Trump voters, and that's why they won't leave him. For somebody like, for instance, Nikki Haley, or even DeSantis.
And people can also see through the double standards of how the media treats Trump. Like, for instance, I still saw on Reddit people talking about the time Trump, mocked that Warren reporter. And in the headline saying, how could Trump do this? This should have been over there. He was sworn to protect this person. But no one ever mentions the time in the 2020 election where Biden threatened to beat up a voter, having a respectful policy disagreement. The media never ran with that. Like, was Biden not supposed to protect that person? It's just, and there's just many other examples of just double standards with Biden's behavior as well.
Yeah. So, Mog, you actually make an interesting point, and I want to read this comment, and then I want to comment on it as well, because one of the things that, let me get into this. Let me read your comment verbatim first. Trump voters say he speaks for me. No, he doesn't speak for you. He thinks you're poor scum, just like everyone else in Washington. So I want to say the difference between Trump and someone like Biden is that Trump says that, whether he believes it or not, is a totally different matter, right? Like, it doesn't matter if he actually believes it, but he says it, right? So he says, yeah, I'm for you, and I'm gonna fight for you, and they're coming after, when they come after me, they're really coming after you, blah blah blah. Like, we've heard him. The difference between that and someone like Biden is that Biden has actually said things like, what, you want to resist the government? We're going to come after you. Or, how are you going to resist the government with your little pistol when, unless you have an F-16, like, and you can take on, like, Biden reinforces that and says, it really doesn't matter what you think, because we're going to do what we're going to do. You know what I mean? And that is a difference in attitude between somebody like Biden, somebody like Mitch McConnell, somebody like Nancy Pelosi. They've been in office forever, and they have forgotten what it means to actually speak to people and relate to people, because they do have the power. They are there, whereas at least Trump feigns understanding, which is something that a lot of people, we can say that, he's a liar, and I would probably agree with you on a lot of levels, but if he can at least speak to that is something brand new still for a lot of people, that they don't get from other politicians. So, that I just wanted to comment on that.
He also gets more benefit of the doubt from people like that because he's not part of the club. He's not a career politician like Biden,
Mm-hmm.
who's been in politics for a very long time. Like, in fact, he was the youngest senator at 30, I believe. And throughout that time, what has he really done to ever benefit the American people? Like, a lot of the issues now today, he was the architect behind, like, making student loans unforgivable through bankruptcy. Like, he played a part in the student loan crisis.
Mm-hmm.
And people can see, like, well, you've been in office this long, you haven't done anything. We can't trust you. Whereas Trump's he's a complete outsider. He's a wild card. So he just gets more benefit of the doubt in that regard.
Right. And I got a lot of people interested in politics as well that probably wouldn't normally be interested. So, there's that. Unfortunately, for Republicans, the result of high turnout is generally Democrats win. So, that's something that Democrats have struggled with for a long time. Obviously, we saw that in 2016 with Hillary Clinton. A lot of people just didn't go out and vote.
That's like and a big reason why it was low turnout for 2016. A major strategic flaw is the media outlets and the polls all saying it's going to be a landslide. Hillary's going to win. Hillary's going to win, all the way up until the very end. And it's just
Mm-hmm.
Instead they should have just set out a panic like, Trump's gonna win. We got to mobilize everyone. This is gonna be a huge disaster on our hands. We all got to get out and vote. But, well, you know what happened. They didn't, and they paid dearly for it from their perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Arima, hope you're doing well. Actually had a great discussion with former Governor and Congressman Mark Sanford. He wasn't part of the establishment and was forced out. Well, that's going to happen to a lot of people. That's an elite club. Especially when you get to the Senate. So I want to talk about this, go ahead.
One thing, if I'd like to talk about regarding the poll situation, like, do you think there is a possibility for increased political violence regarding 2024 election? Because I see, like, I don't see anyone being happy with 2024, to be honest. Like, for instance, if Trump doesn't get the GOP nominee, and he runs third party, he's going to tank Republicans. It's going to just give the presidency whoever the Democratic candidate is. And I see at that point possibly just people no longer having trust in the system. Like, what's your take on that?
Well, if Trump doesn't get the 2024 nomination, I think that he would either run third party or he would have a major influence in the candidate, and there would be probably some backroom deals. Because I do think that at the end of the day, Trump would rather probably have, like, Trump will beef more with somebody like Biden than he would with, a DeSantis or a Ramaswamy or, so I think there would just be some backroom dealings, that kind of thing that would happen before Trump would run third party. I can't imagine Trump would be, kind of dumb enough to think that, if he did that Republicans would not. I mean, it would probably be like 400 Democrats in the House. You know what I mean? Like, it would be ridiculous.
I wouldn't say the motivation would be any sort of level of intelligence. I would more see it if he ran third party, just more out of spite, really.
I mean, yeah, but he also knows the results at the end of the day would be pretty bad for the policies that he'd want.
But I mean, the question is, though, does he really truly care about the policies? Or is it just about his own personal benefit? Because if it's just his own personal benefit, I can see him just saying, screw it, just burn it down.
I do think he cares about it a little bit. I don't think he wants to lose. And running third party is, basically a losing proposition, no matter how he would look at it.
But wouldn't he be in a losing proposition anyway if he doesn't get the nomination?
If he doesn't get the nomination,
Right, and yes.
yeah, of course he would be, but he has a lot of people that he would be able to kind of win. Like, I don't foresee there being a situation where, without some kind of court shenanigans, Trump doesn't get the nomination. I mean, it's not like he's 5 points ahead. He's 30, 40 points ahead. Mm-hmm. And so it's highly unlikely that he will, without some kind of, like, either he dies or he is, barred from running for president in a plea deal, or, something like that.
I'm just saying, would that be legally enforceable?
I don't know. Go ahead.
I don't think it would be, like, because in my knowledge, I could be totally wrong about this, but I believe the only way to be barred from presidency is if he's impeached and the Senate decided to convict him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know, to be honest with you. But
I also see that as another, source of potential conflict for 2024. Like, because if Trump wins the presidency, he can just pardon himself, and that would absolutely outrage people on the left. Like, they would be furious.
Mm-hmm. Nog says, I think what we will see is what might have happened had Nixon did not resign and wasn't pardoned. So just a legal circus surrounding him. Hi, DC. Hope you're doing well.
But the difference between Nixon and Trump right now is the Senate's not going to convict Trump. It's going to be a federal court,
right?
And that doesn't bar him from the presidency. And also, I don't think Trump would even get convicted. I think all this courtroom stuff, I think is just going to end in a mistrial. That's just my personal belief. Because I just feel there's going to be one person on the jury who's just going to be steadfast, not guilty.
Yeah, because we can't actually, like,
it's not a fair trial. It's never going to be a fair trial. It's impossible.
Right.
Like, that's a major flaw of the system we're in. Like, if you have enough fame, influence, you can't have a fair trial ever.
Yeah, we're discussing the polls. Well, here, jumping to the Democrat primary. So I found this little story, and this is actually a last-minute story that I found when I was checking the polls. So, Rep. Dean Phillips, which I don't know, never heard of him, but he's from Minnesota, apparently. He's a Democrat. And he says, like most voters, he wants more candidates to challenge President Biden for the 2024 Democratic presidential nomination. They know who you are, Phillips said to potential candidates. My call is to those who are well-positioned, well-prepared, have good character and competency. They know who they are to jump in. And then it kind of goes into an interview. And I won't read the whole interview, but I do want to read this little thing here. And it says, and this is the rep talking, Democrats are telling me that they want not a coronation, but they want a competition. The New York Times poll from this week shows 55% of Democratic voters want some alternatives to the current people in the primary. 83% of those under 30. Democrats under 30 want alternatives, and about 76% are independents. So I just want to make my case. So I don't even know who this person is. He's a rep in the House of Representatives. So I don't know if that's him trying to say that he wants to get in. But what I would say is, I guess my question to you first would be, what do you think who are some of the alternatives that you would see running against Biden, and to what degree success do you think they would have, or what motivations do you think they would have?
I mean, possible alternatives. I mean, Andrew Yang, potentially, he might want to run again. Like, he's younger. He has some potential ideas younger people might be interested in, like his UBI proposals, possibly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think honestly, it's hard to say as to what degree of success someone can have. Like, because the thing is, the Democratic Party is a private organization. If they want Joe Biden to be the nominee, Joe Biden's going to be the nominee. At the end of
Mm-hmm.
the day, you're fighting an uphill battle. It's it's really hard to think strategically about it. It's the just the political landscape in America. It's just completely just foobar, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, even if we just look
Like
at
because I would think like for a true future, if you want to uphold this republic, like you have to go with third parties. There needs to be healthy competition. You can't have just a two-party stronghold.
hmm that's one of the interesting things about like the UK is that they have quite a few different parties, and so for instance, when the Conservatives held their special election that Theresa May called back in I don't know what was it 16, 17, something like that. It was really funny because um, the Conservatives actually lost seats in that election, and so they had a majority still, but it wasn't enough to override, the Labour Party and their allies. So they actually had to get they actually because the Conservatives in the UK are kind of considered like the moderate type of party, like as far as like quote unquote right wing, but like not that far. But they had to kind of form an alliance with like the DUP, which was what they would call far right there. And it was really interesting because if we had that kind of thing in the United States, there would be a lot more diversification of thought. One of the things that really got to me was, for instance, like Hakeem Jeffries being elected as the House minority speaker. And not that I investigated him or did any research into who he was as a person or like his accomplishments or anything. The only thing I heard from the media was that he's black, and I'm like, that's kind of insulting. Like that you would put that above any accomplishments or any type of qualifications that he has to be the minority leader in the House. That you would just say, well, they constantly said he's the first minority, speaker in that position and whatnot. And he's not the Speaker of the House, but he's the minority leader. And so it was constantly all the Democrats were in unison voting for him. But if there was some kind of a third party that even held a few seats, right, there would be a lot of diversification of thought because those people would have to, would effectively kind of control, like, especially now when all the Republicans have are like 4 seats, right? Like, imagine a third party having like 10 seats. Wouldn't that be pretty interesting? Whereas the two major parties would constantly have to fight over the votes there.
Another interesting thing, how would you feel about ranked choice voting making its way in the United States of America? Because even if we're stuck with two parties, Democrats, Republicans, I feel ranked choice voting could potentially alleviate some issues as well. Just not having a winner takes all. Like, if there is ranked choice Biden voting, I don't think Biden would have been in the primary in 2016. I mean,
Well,
2020. Now, oh man, I'm having a Biden moment now.
well, my problem with ranked choice voting
Hmm.
is just voting in general gives a lot of people the ability to giving people that ability to make that choice without any responsibility of making that choice, to me, is first of all, the foundation as far as what needs to be changed about voting in general, because again, anybody can vote. Do I think that is correct? No, I don't. If you have no knowledge of the system, you can go and vote for the first name on the list. You can vote for the last name on the list. You can write in whatever you want. And so my problem with voting, and when everybody talks about, oh, save our democracy, do this, it's like, okay, just what are we doing? Saving the people that don't know what they're doing to vote? Why is that a fair way of deciding what should be done? And so that was my problem with, I guess, voting in general. But as far as ranked choice voting goes, I think that there's a little bit more favorability to the more popular candidates, and I think it does kind of in a certain way put third-party candidates at a little bit of a disadvantage, because a lot of those first rounds are going to go to the popular candidates, and the second rounds are going to be the people that are the popular candidates that are more closely aligned. Whereas a independent that mounts a successful run, maybe in a 3 or 4 way race, could eke out a victory. So I guess it just depends on what you would want the end result to be. I don't have a strong opinion either way as far as ranked choice voting, just because I think the foundation of it is rotten. But I think that I think it would tend to probably, it works well if you have it within a party, for, like you kind of said, for the primaries, but as far as in a general, I think it works less so.
What would because you say voting is rotten at the foundation, I'm curious, what would your ideal government look like for the United States of America? Would it be a monarchy, or would it be restricted voting where you have to take, tests and get maybe a voting license to vote? What would you prefer, or would you prefer something else?
Well, I think that, what we had before as far as the Senate, the Senate is now kind of the popular vote in a state, which before that, it was the state sending representatives to represent them in the Senate. And so I would think that the House of Representatives and the Senate would have to come together to give the executive his power or her power. And I would want that old way of the Senate because, of course, a direct democracy has its benefits in some ways, and especially when you have those people voting for the House of Representatives, for instance, the lower house. When you have people voting in that kind of an election, they're probably going to know a little bit more about the issues that affect them in their everyday lives and how that can, how they interact with those, because it's pretty local. But on a senatorial level, the Senate was designed more to represent the state regardless of party affiliation. So, for instance, somebody like Joe Manchin, who is constantly at odds with his own party, for instance, would probably be somebody that the Senate would have sent originally, the state of West Virginia would have sent to the Senate originally, because he is, he tries to be fair and do what he thinks is best for his state. You can say what you want about him, but he constantly talks about his own state and how different legislation can benefit it, whereas I don't always see that from other senators. So I think that a system like that would be better, and then those two houses would have to come together as far as electing the executive. because you have the system of direct democracy in one pocket, but then you also have the state interest in the other.
Mm-hmm. And I'm curious because you were talking about the Senate in the old way. How do you feel about the Electoral College?
Well, I think it's more fair than a direct democracy because each state is limited in its power. So, I mean, I prefer it over a direct democracy.
I mean, how fair would you say it is in the modern era, though? Because I believe that the Electoral College nowadays is more of a vestigial organ. Like, because I believe a lot of states, the electors, they're mandated to go along with what the state selects, so they don't have really a choice anymore.
Are you
Like,
saying?
so
Go ahead.
what I'm saying is, like, do you think it should go back to the old way where they do have that choice to go against the state, or should it just be removed entirely?
Well, it's not a question that I had really thought about. Off the top of my head, I would probably say that as the system is now, the state should be, if an elector wants to, kind of go against what the state does, then what was the point in voting? What was the point of voting in the first place? So if you want to do some kind of like a proportional level, the problem is that a lot of states aren't going to have that, proportion level to begin with. I don't think you'd see much difference. But again, I haven't really researched the question, so I don't want to, say that I'm fully with that, but I'd have to, kind of go over my opinion.
I'll just ask like one little follow-up question here, because you believed it would have been the electoral system is more fair than a direct democracy. Like, do you believe that because it's not, like, why would you describe it as such, pretty much?
Well, because population centers are always going to be in certain areas. So the reason that we don't have a lot of population, for instance, in the center of the country is there's, a little bit of a harder time with getting certain goods like water and, shipments to that area. But also there is there's large population centers along the coast for the most part. Well, usually you're going to have fair weather along the coast, and you're going to have, in the center of the country, a state like Nebraska, for instance, gets really hot in the summer and really cold in the winter. Like, it's very extreme. Whereas, kind of in Florida, we have, pretty much summer all year. In California, you have, like this, for most of the year, you're between like 60 and 85. New York is a little bit different, but it's still on the water, and it's a population center that has a lot of historical value and has a lot of businesses that are built up, from old money and whatnot. So you have things like that shape the voting system. But a lot of people in the center of the country that happen to live there that often bring a lot of necessary types of manufacturing and food production. There's a better word for that, and for some reason it's escaping me. A lot of those people live there miles from society or whatever, and because of what they produce, they need to have a little bit more of a voice, and so giving them a little bit more of a fair shake as far as the election system, I think benefits more than a direct democracy where you've got a lot of people in one population center that are going to vote a certain way, and that goes for any way you vote, whether it be somebody voting in Florida, who's a Republican, or California that's a Democrat.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for clarifying. Thank you for your thoughts on the matter.
Of course. So let's move on to Florida news, since we're speaking about that. This is an article from USA Today, and it's AP Psychology effectively banned in Florida because of gender sexuality chapter. So I'll read a little bit of this, and then we'll go over public schools and the fun stuff. Florida superintendents have been advised by the state to drop their advanced placement psychology classes unless they exclude any topics related to gender or sexuality, according to the College Board, which oversees the AP program. Such a shift would mean the courses couldn't be called advanced placement, however, or used by students to earn college credit, the College Board said, and the organization is advising Florida districts not to offer the classes until the state reverses its decision, saying any AP psychology course taught in Florida will violate either state law or college requirements. We are sad to have learned that today the Florida Department of Education has effectively banned AP Psychology in the state by instructing Florida superintendents that teaching foundational content on sexual orientation and gender identity is illegal under state law, the College Board said. The state has said districts are free to teach AP Psychology only if it excludes any mention of these essential topics. In June, the College Board said it would not alter the popular AP Psychology class after the state asked the organization to review all AP courses to see whether they need modification to ensure compliance with a Florida law and State Board of Education rule targeting instruction on sexual orientation and gender identity. So, I mean, you get the gist of the story here. Basically, the College Board, which is assigned to granting credits to for college credits based on the high school class, is saying that they're going to decredit the program, basically. So not allow students that take this to get credits because the course has to be, I guess what they're implying is, changed enough where it would not accurately reflect what they want it to reflect. So do you have any thoughts on that?
It's a very tearing subject for me because it comes at like multiple angles for me personally. Like, on one hand, it's the public school system, and I don't care what a public school does. But on the other hand, property tax goes to that public school, so it's kind of like you do care and you don't at the same time. It's bizarre, but in my opinion, I think honestly, because how many students are taking an AP psychology course in the first place? I think a much fairer way to handle it would be like send out like a booklet, a letter, whatever, to the parents giving detailed instructions about these courses and have the parent sign off on it, have the consent of the parent, and let the kid take the class. I mean, that's my take on it. How about yourself?
Well, my thing is well, I don't know that that's an option for them, first of all. I'll say that, because the thing is that it's not you can't teach it unless unless the parents authorize it. It's you can't teach it, period. That kind of a thing. So I don't know that that's an option for them. But what I would say is that the colleges sound like they're going to war with this. And I would also ask them why, gender identity and whatnot needs to be brought in at a high school level if they think that, this is a necessary topic for this type of class, right? Like, why are we making it required to discuss that type of material in a classroom? Again, that's objectively about psychology. There's a baseline that you kind of have to get into, and there's so much about psychology that can be discussed without talking about these specific types of terms. So this kind of sounds like, to me, like they just want to start a war. Like they just want to go to war with DeSantis or the state of Florida or whatnot to get into the, I guess, political cycle.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a weird situation all in all. Like I said, it's like because it's the state coming down on it, saying no, you can't teach this. Like you said, regardless of parental consent. But like I
my thing is, go ahead.
Like I said, it tugs at me from so many different directions because I have things to say about psychology in general as well.
Here's the thing, like, taxpayers are mandated to pay for public schools.
Right.
And what I've always said is that if you are mandated to pay for public schools, then what should be being taught should be objective, and it should be basic functioning in society. And it should be on the parents and the students themselves to go out and figure out what kind of curricula that they're interested in and then pursue that. The taxation that we get from public schools, in my opinion, should be at an absolute minimum. It should, once you kind of learn how to speak, write, do basic math, kind of come out of that, then you're on your own and you have to figure it out. And we would get a lot, people would be taxed a lot less. Like, people don't understand how much of their rent and how much of their property, mortgage, etc., goes to public schools. Like, they don't really understand that. They don't understand how much of their federal taxes goes to public schools. A lot of people say, "Oh, it's free." It's not free. You're paying for it. It's just you think it's free because it's you don't get a bill you don't get a bill. Also, it may technically be free to people that don't pay taxes at all, or just happen to live in an area. But the thing is like, that is somebody just leeching off your tax system or tax dollars. You have to pay for them if you are somebody that pays rent or pays mortgage or pay property taxes, pay federal income tax. All of these things go to public schools, and given inflation and given unions and given everything that surrounds a public school, free lunches, all this other, the amount that the public schools need each year somehow goes up. And I mentioned this before too. Like, you would think as much as we pay for a public school, like, you might be able to get band instruments, if your kid decides to take band, or you might be able to get, certain books, like, paid for.
And do you think being your manatee go, lunch would be free for everybody?
Yeah. But no, the school wants more of your money. The school won't pay for a field trip. That's...
If they do go on a field trip, you're not allowed to have fun.
Right. Well, we had a Starlight and I had a discussion about this after the last stream. And all his field trip shenanigans, which he'll get to tell you about sometime. But I mean, that's the whole thing, is like, you still have to pay for all this. It's not free. And the illusion of it being free is something that just hasn't cascaded into the public yet. I think it's kind of starting to, because I think that a lot of, specifically people who would call themselves conservatives are, starting to, take their kids out of school and whatnot. But still, it's the vast majority of people that send their kids to public school.
I mean, I just thought while you're discussing this, I thought of a potential solution here, because it seems, the state's coming down and the colleges are complaining about it. But if it's really that big of a deal to the colleges, why can't they allow the students to learn the curriculum on their own outside of school?
Well, I think that's mostly because they want to, like I said, I think they want to inject this into the public eye, and so if they do that, they lose power, right? They lose power over that narrative, because in my opinion, a lot of the, we've discussed this, but a lot of the gender ideology stuff that they say is required is conjecture that they have to sell, right? And so when it's kind of like when you buy, I'm just trying to think of something like
franchise a Dairy Queen.
Well, I was gonna say something like unglamorous, like if you're buying, I don't know, jewelry, and you're looking in a catalog, right? Okay, well, you can look through, 50 pages of jewelry and nothing looks great, but like when you have that person in front of you that's like showing you the jewelry, letting you touch it, showing you how big the diamond is, showing you how, sparkly the gold is, because their, showrooms are all lit up, and, that kind of a thing, then you're like, ooh, I want to buy that, whereas you have to be sold that in a certain way. Like, you may not necessarily need jewelry, but if you've got a salesperson that, happens to be skilled in, linguistics and is, selling you jewelry, then you're more prone to buy it, because you feel like, oh, the value of this is, a lot higher. Whereas if you're looking at 50 pieces of jewelry in a catalog, they kind of all mold together, and, a lot of times they're going to look the same. So I think that it's the same concept for this type of ideology, that it has to be sold, because otherwise it just doesn't have any sparkle.
And not also sold, but it has to be protected at all costs.
Yeah,
because
of course.
you start picking at their logic behind it, it all just falls apart.
Mm-hmm. And we're gonna get back to this. Actually, no, I'll move this.
And so basically, I think nowadays, like, the main takeaway from this topic is it's just political grandstanding, and just ignore the colleges, just ignore the schools. That's kind of my takeaway at this point, because it seems like, because based on what you're telling me, like, if that's the case, then they're not going to be, the colleges and whatnot, they're not going to be open to a real solution to the problem.
Well, the other thing I think that is going on here is that they are trying to frame the students as the victims here, and saying, look at what you're doing, is you're taking away these students' rights to have college credit. That saves this family $1,000 or whatever, because they don't have to take this, which probably way more at this point. I'm just throwing out a number. But, it saves this family money, because now they don't have to pay for a college class that, they could have saved. Instead, they have to, go and learn that at the AP, or excuse me, at the college at a basic level, and so, but we're going to get back to that in a minute, because I want to go into the story, which kind of goes along that same narrative, and get your thoughts on, more public school stuff, and then also to see what kind of the narrative you think is going on here. So,
well, before you do, just like one little quick question for you: have you ever taken AP classes in high school?
Yeah, I actually did. I took AP Biology and AP Calc.
And would you say were those classes very beneficial when you went to college? Like, were the credits and time put into those classes worth it in the long run?
Well, no, because what I ended up going to school for, I changed. Like I was originally going for education and ended up going for business administration. So those two classes weren't really beneficial because they didn't really assist me in what I was going to do. I mean, they also counted for high school credits, so that was fine that I took them, but
I took an AP environmental class my freshman year, and they had a meat-free day. Worst food I ever had. Then I got food poisoning later that night. That's my AP class experience for everyone out there.
There you go. There you go. All right. So the title of this story is one that Ma gave me. It is from The Advocate, which that sound like a very fair and balanced media source. Okay. So Mississippi School District implements transphobic dress code.
I can already tell where this is going. This narrative is going. Just alone on The Advocate name.
It's gonna be great. A school district in Mississippi has implemented a dress code that discriminates against transgender students. Last month, the Harrison County School Board adopted a dress code that requires students to wear clothes matching the gender assigned to them at birth, according to the Sun Herald. There are multiple changes in the dress code in the 2023-2024 student handbook, including 3 new items related to gender. It states that boys must wear shorts and girls must wear dresses, skirts, shorts, or pants. I guess boys can't wear pants. The third section says attire must follow a student's birth certificate or permanent file. The elementary student handbook also uses the same language. Earlier this year, the district made headlines for denying a transgender student the right to wear a dress to her graduation ceremony, prompting the American Civil Liberties Union to file suit. She wore dresses, skirts, and other traditionally feminine clothing throughout her high school career without issue, according to the complaint. Due to the judge's decision not to intervene, the student missed graduation.
Like to add, don't you usually wear a cap and gown to graduation, not a dress?
I guess not her. Him, whatever. The district's move in Mississippi follows several recent attempts to restrict transgender rights. A law passed in 2021 prohibits trans women and girls from joining teams that align with their gender identity. Another passed this year prohibits trans minors from receiving gender-affirming health care. So, you get this. I think you're going to get the gist of the story, because it's not a lot of, it's like, okay, they filed suit, and, they're currently in court, and blah, blah, blah. That's the rest of the story. But the thing is I want to talk to you a little bit about victimhood. And the question I'm going to ask first is, do you think that victimhood is held up as virtuous in society today?
Victimhood definitely plays a huge role in today's society. I view it as something that's celebrated, put up on a pedestal, praised, but virtuous, I wouldn't use the word virtuous, because to me the word virtuous means sacrifice, giving something up in pursuit of something. Like there has to be a cost to being virtuous, and there's nothing virtuous about today's society's victimhood.
Mm-hmm. It's always interesting to me, because one of the things that, a lot of people will talk about with our society today is that the victimhood narrative is often painted for people that are in, the shoes of whoever they want to give it to. So, for instance, back in 2015, 2016, all you heard about was feminism and women's rights and pussy
Those were the
hats
days
and,
compared to now.
I know, weren't they? And now you have men that are participating in women's sports because they said, literally in some cases a week ago that they've changed genders and they, now identify as women, and that's okay. That's okay with them, and they're able to just, go into the women's sports. But then when the women actually, want to be competitive and, get into the grain of saying, hey, I don't believe that's fair. I don't believe that's right. Like, I want to compete with other biological women and not, a male that, decided to become a woman. That is then treated as those women are the bullies, and the trans athlete is actually the victim, even though they're the ones winning. And so, to me, I think that one of the things that society has done is it has painted people that we want to see as victims into, a virtuous light. Because, for instance, one thing that I always get on that I haven't gotten on in a long time, actually, but I'm coming back to you, single moms, right? Single moms. Oh, they're just, they're these women that work 3 jobs, and, they have to, pay the rent, and they have to, do, all the things because, daddy left them, and, left them crying, and they're, they're stressed out, and they have no time, and they have no energy, but, they're moms, they're the greatest, they're the best, we have to celebrate them, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Guess what? Single moms, that is the minimum. That is the minimum requirement for you. So, if I have, working in HR, if I have an employee that is working 40 hours a week and putting out the minimum, my job is to make sure that that minimum requirement is going to be enough to sustain, but B, I want to increase that productivity beyond the minimum. And so I'm going to be looking for ways to do that. And, when I talk to a single mom, you are really kind of required to be there all the time in every single place. Like, because you chose to have the child. Remember, I'm pro-choice. Just letting you know. You chose to have the child. So, if you chose to have the child, then you have to put that priority on top. And for people to paint you as a victim because you chose to have the child and you now have to work to support that child, put food on the table, and to do your best to fulfill the roles of both parents, that's the minimum. That's the minimum requirement. You don't get celebrated for that. Now, you don't hear about this a lot, but, if you hear from somebody that's like, oh, the single mom after, the relationship went south, she moved back, in with her dad, and, that way the kid had a male influence, and, the kid, or, she reached out to her neighbors, and the neighbors were, really helpful in, kind of integrating that and being a male role model and whatnot. Like, if you told me, if they said that, I would be impressed with that behavior. But what do you have a lot? You have the mom, and actually this happens a lot with single dads too, maybe even more often, but they immediately put an emphasis on dating, right? They immediately decide to put themselves above their child and go after a dating type of situation where it's like, well, my first relationship didn't work out, so I'm sure that with a child now, another relationship's going to work out. And so, again, I do not look at them in mass as victims, with the occasional exception of, for instance, like, one of the parents died, right? Or one of the parents was really abusive and that didn't come out for a few years in the relationship, or one of the parents, became paralyzed and as a result, was still able to be there, but not in the same capacity that they would have been as a, like a parent that didn't have that paralysis, that kind of a thing. So when I go to this, I see the same thing happening with, like, again, the transgender athletes that are saying, oh, we're the victims here. Not the women that we're competing against that actually wanted to, compete against people that have the fair advantage, but we are the victims, and they're the bullies, and they're the bad guys, we're the good guys. There's no gray area, and, it's funny that they dump things like drinks, they dump things like drinks and actually try to attack people like Posey Parker, for instance, in New Zealand. She's a women's rights activist for women's, you know who she is? Okay. They actually surrounded her and started, like, attacking her, and had it not been for security, I don't know what they would have done to her, but she was forced out of the country. But yet, they're the victims.
You know what I find interesting in my own personal perspective? I want to get your thoughts on this. It seems like, people in the trans community, when they go out to attack people like this, it seems they have a lot more ferocity and viciousness towards women compared to men. Like, have you noticed that yourself?
Well, I think that there is one of those because they, in a sense, feel that women should be on their side. So, for instance, I probably experienced some of that because a lot of times when I espouse my political views to, other gay men, for instance, they think that I have a duty to support, the Democrats or whoever happens to be, fighting for whatever gay rights or whatever, that I have a duty to support that because that's one of, I guess, what they would consider my priorities, or they project that priority onto me. And so a lot of times to them, they take it a little bit personal because they think that somebody can't think differently than them because that is their major attribute that sets them apart from somebody else. So they think that being gay makes them special. And so therefore, that specialness is dissolved if that's not walking in lockstep with like-minded people. And so they take it personal when I am not saying the same things they are. And I think it happens with women as well, because they think that women owe them, to an extent, their loyalty. And I actually spoke about this a couple weeks ago, but, a lot of times, this is one of the reasons, in my opinion, that they're actually also overprotective of women that are, or, particularly amenable to women that are in their circle, is because it's actually a form of misogyny that they do that.
Do you also think it could be, like, I feel like some of the people who lash out against women, I feel like they look at women and also see that they should be more they have, like, stereotypes in their mind where women should be more agreeable, more nurturing, more accepting, and when they feel rejected by real women, I think that's also parts of what just sets them off more so compared to a straight man.
Well, yeah, and the thing is that it often removes the specialness, which is one of the reasons that you call that the term cis, for instance, came out. It removes that specialness from like normal people and kind of makes it like you're one of the normies kind of a thing. So, again, if you are a woman, like if you are like a lot of times they say trans women are women. Okay, well if you're a woman, you wouldn't need to be called trans. You would just be a woman, right? Like you wouldn't need that title. You wouldn't need that qualification. You wouldn't. I would never qualify somebody that I wouldn't say you're a cis woman. Like I wouldn't do that because that's stupid. Like that's I would just say you're a woman. You're not a woman, that kind of a thing. But to me, that viewpoint is a little bit more acceptable if they would just drop the qualification. But they don't do that. And so
I like to expand on qualifications as well. Chest feeding, birthers, period havers.
Right.
And they also... I see a lot of arguments from the trans community where they refer to things like Viagra, treatment for gynecomastia, like artificial breast for a woman who had a mastectomy from breast cancer.
Mm-hmm.
They refer to all that as that's gender affirming care. So if that's gender affirming care, you must support our crap.
Yeah. Well, I'm a fan of you get to pay for whatever you want. But I'm also a fan of, children and, teens, are not really a prime audience for deciding permanent types of decisions, right?
Especially the real young, like 4 or 5 year olds. Like, because I saw like the WHO recommend start talking about that stuff, with your toddlers. And the thing is, I remember when I was 4 years old. When I was 4 years old, I thought women had a penis up their butt, and I also thought that women got pregnant through exercise. So it's like, when I was 4 years old, I could not make a determination whether I wanted to be a man or a woman. Like I had no clue about the inner workings of such things at that age.
Right.
And you really can't either until you hit puberty, until you grow up, get out in the world and like have, relationships with people to really understand yourself and whatnot, to get the full picture.
Yeah. And so, it's just so funny when you discuss, for instance, like even tattoos, like, most places you can't get a tattoo until you're 18, at least without parental consent. But yet there are states that are trying to block, you can have a gender affirming surgery at any age. And they actually call it child abuse if you don't allow them. So
yeah, it's things have changed radically over the years. It used to be back in the day, if you had gender dysphoria and you went to a psychologist, whatever, the surgeries used to be for extreme rare cases, and nowadays it's anyone can get it. Like I legitimately could just get my testicles removed today. Like it's. Like, and I bring that up example because I saw a doctor actually doing it before with, like, not even any real counselor or anything. You just go in. If you have the money, off they go.
Yeah.
And it's because there's crackdowns on doctors where it's affirmation only. You cannot challenge the patient.
Yeah.
And it's like, and my whole thing is, an adult should be able to do whatever they want with their body if they have informed consent. Like, so if you really want these surgeries, you really want these hormones as an adult, you know what? You want to call yourself a woman, go do it. Go do you, but don't force your beliefs on the entirety of society and make everyone else bow down to your lifestyle and your choices. That's where my big problems comes from.
Yes, in my opinion, especially children, like it shouldn't be, because children are so easily persuadable as well. So
Exactly.
asking a child every week, for instance, and this is quite commonplace in public schools, which you pay for, and you pay for at the threat of jail time and whatnot. It's actually stolen from you. When you ask a child every week, do they really feel like a boy? Do they really feel like a girl? You don't have to say it in a way that, makes them question. Like, all you have to do is raise the question, right? Like, and the answer could be no. But why would I trust a 6-year-old? I mean, that 6-year-old will probably go home and say he wants all cookies for dinner. Right? Like, it's not something that I would trust a child to make a decision on. And so, even pretty much anyone below a certain age, I wouldn't trust, that kind of thing. But to catch up,
we've talked about this before as well. Like, what does it even mean to feel like a boy or a girl? It's
right. And they don't know what feeling like the opposite would be because you didn't grow up as the opposite, right? So.
And I hear trans people like try to say it's like they try to describe it how it feels to be the opposite gender. Like they try to say, oh, you wouldn't know. It's like you don't feel your bones until there's something wrong with them. They use that analogy. And it's like they can never really give a coherent argument of what it truly means to be another gender. And a lot of examples they do try to use, that's just your personality. Like, you can be a feminine man. Right. You can be a masculine woman. It's like a lot of gender is just stereotypes and just based on culture, gender roles.
Right.
And I've even said before, really, like, gender roles in modern America are dead. They aren't really in effect anymore because nowadays, a woman can choose to be single and just focus on her career. A man can stay at home, take care of children while a woman goes out and works. So it's like gender roles don't really even play a big role anymore in society.
Right. Okay, let's go over the what's been being taught, or in chat, I should say. I don't know why I said being taught. It's a list of nationwide public opinion polls that were conducted relating to the... Okay, he just gave me a link for YouTube. Let's see. I'm just skipping over some spam here. Okay.
Spam?
Yeah, we had a little bit of a
Is
troll.
someone telling you to kill yourself again, Casper?
No, not that time. They were just yelling penis in chat. Okay, so Mog says, it doesn't help that when women interject their views, the vast majority of people call them Karen. Yeah, I mean, that is a thing. Unfortunately, we have a story that we're going to discuss in a minute that goes over that. Someone's been watching local TV for the Pfizer commercials. Is it you?
Did you hear about the Pfizer plant that got hit by a tornado?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, it destroyed. I don't know if it destroyed the whole plant, but it definitely destroyed part of it. I saw a picture of it, news article. So let's get some ease and chat for Pfizer, everybody. Get them through these trying times.
Yeah, they're really struggling. They just don't have the money. I mean, I guess a lot of people, as we discussed last week, didn't take the 45th booster, and so therefore, their sales are way down.
Did you ever do research to find out what booster we're on now?
I haven't. I think it's the 3rd booster for real, but I can't say that with any veracity.
Well, that's what I told you.
Yeah, but I think so. They had one for Omicron, and then they had one for the one that came out.
Is Omicron the latest variant? Because I know we
I don't
had
know.
Delta, then we had Omicron.
Yeah. Mog says that he thinks it's the 5th. Mog says, when I was 5, I remembered wearing my mom's high heels and pantyhoses.
I think like every boy did that. Like I did that, you know.
Yeah. Well, I
I
don't.
also like when I also, you know, at that age I didn't care for quote unquote gendered toys. Like I'd want like a Barbie doll, you know, and like
Mm-hmm.
some feminine toys. Like I didn't care. Like I just saw a toy, wanted to play with it. Didn't matter to me what it was.
Yeah, I used to play with the little army men, like when I was younger, and I wanted the Barbie dolls, so that they could play house. I'm not even kidding. So yeah.
Did your parents ever like try to push back in against the buying of the Barbie dolls? Like how'd they feel about it?
They didn't. They didn't really buy me that at all. They. I guess as a kid, I probably couldn't properly explain why I wanted the Barbie dolls. But I think if I remember right, my mom's major um, complaint to that was actually because Barbie costs money. Like Barbie costs a significant amount of money as opposed to, like off-brand, whatever. So I think that's more the reason why I never got them. And my older sister, she's 10 years older than me, so I never really inherited anything from her as far as that went.
And speaking of childhood, you know what makes me feel ill? When I was a child, I was big into Yu-Gi-Oh, really big into Yu-Gi-Oh.
Mm-hmm.
I had like if I would have had a six-figure collection if I kept everything in just pristine condition from way back in the day. It just makes me because I didn't take care of the stuff. Like I played with everything. Like I actually used the cards in duels, so this makes me feel ill. Like the amount of money lost I could have potentially had if I just kept on everything sealed, just the complete sets I had from
Yeah.
like LOB, etc.
Mog says Eris Koviad variant is the newest, so I don't know.
Isn't that the Disney mermaid?
You're going to see that new movie, right? You're going to see that remake?
Anyway, did you ever, just out of curiosity, did you ever play with any of the Pokemon Yu-Gi-Oh cards as a kid?
I had the Pokemon game, but
The
not.
Pokemon games.
Yeah, I had those.
That's
But
stupid how expensive they got.
yeah,
Well, I
which
had those too. Should have kept those complete in box.
Mhm. Now I can just.
The beautiful thing is, like, probably like nowadays, like a lot of the modern stuff is not going to be anywhere near as valuable because everyone just is hoarding it now.
Yeah.
Because back in those Game Boy days, like hardly anyone ever kept the box for Game Boy games. They all got thrown in the trash.
Well, I was talking to somebody, and they were asking. Somebody I play poker with, and they were asking me, like, who would buy like Nintendo games and then keep them sealed for like wouldn't you open them right away? I'm like, a lot of people, yeah, would open them right away, but there's probably a lot of people that they bought it and then maybe they bought 10 games and a couple of them for their kid or something. A few of them were never opened and they just sat and sealed.
And there's also the fact too is like you can come across just a sealed case from the factory of games
Mm-hmm.
as well. Like that happened recently with I'm a fan of Darkseid too.
Mm-hmm.
And some guy was found a case of sealed copies from way back in the 90s selling them like 20-30 bucks.
Yeah.
I should have bought some of them because they're all gone now and it's going to cost a lot more for a sealed copy now, but
Mm-hmm.
it always seems like when it comes to video game related collectibles, I always get fucked. Like, I have one last video game left. One last video game left I've been trying to sell for 2 years, and it's Biohazard Zero, the trial edition.
Oh,
Sealed.
okay.
I bought it for back in the day, like $70, and now they sell for like $20. Lose $50, so it like a lot of Resident Evil stuff. Like Japan had a lot of interesting collectibles I used to collect. Like they had like Tokyo Marui made nice airsoft guns for the samurai
Mm-hmm.
edges and stuff, and they went down in value too. They didn't hold value. I don't know
Yeah.
why either. It's bizarre.
I have a video game that you might be interested in buying from me. It's called Lifeline. I don't know if you've heard of it, but I have a copy of it that I could send you if you want.
How much is it? 80. How much is it? Like $80?
Yeah, I'll take $80 for it.
80 bucks.
For you, I'll take 79.
99.
99. If you want to give me 99.
79, 99,
Yeah.
99 cents.
Yeah,
Would
the
you
friends and
autograph
family
it?
discount. Sure, of course. Watch closely and guide me. Mog says Barbie Little Mermaid double feature. And he also says, I had the original gay superhero growing up, He-Man. I had a S-ton of that. Well, yeah, I don't know. I'm not really into like certain brands or action figures or anything. I guess I just never got that way growing up.
I was only
welcome,
really
Shay.
interested. I was only really interested in figures, like as a real little kid. Although
Yeah.
I did get into Halo action figures like a little bit later.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, let's go a little bit into the next topic here, which is a story that Mog sent, which is by The Daily Beast, which is just a treasure trove of journalism. It's really the golden standard that we all need to be held to. The title is Confused Karen Protests Target's Pride March by Wearing Blackface. A video of an angry shopper Karen has gone viral, showing the woman proudly parading through a Denver Target wearing blackface aggressively and cynically, asking
Aggressively.
I know. Don't you love that word? Like you just put anything near aggressively, and it's great. Asking employees for Pride merchandise. The video was uploaded to Twitter, the platform now known as X, by ICX Blues on Wednesday, but removed early Thursday. TMZ identified the rogue shopper as Urcelia Campbell. My mom and I dealt with this in a Target in Denver today. The post was captioned, "Dude, WTF." Campbell can be seen in the clip very visibly wearing dark brown makeup caked all over her face and leaning over a red counter. You're a
So is
horrible...
it blackface or is it dark brown makeup? Which is it?
Well, they have a big picture, and to me it looks dark brown, but I don't know.
Like, would you say it looks like, someone hit that liquid tanner a little too much, or does it look like a coal miner?
No, it's not like it's tan. It looks like it's actually like done deliberately in the picture here. You're a horrible person, someone off camera tells Campbell when she gets the counter. You're a horrible person, she echoes back. You're literally doing blackface, the person holding the camera tells her. Campbell acknowledges her offensive appearance. Lester Holt did whiteface and nobody said S, she says, referencing NBC News anchor dressing up as British singer Susan Boyle for Halloween. So, I don't know. To me, this just seems like I don't know. It just seems staged. First of all, just imagine walking into a Target. Like, well, I don't shop at Target. I've never shopped at. I actually have like. I don't want to say like the worst stories about Target. My problem with Target is they're just inept. Like every time I go in there is some kind of problem that prevents me from, like the last time I went there, I bought, or I wanted, I guess I technically did buy it. I bought a deep fryer, right? And first of all, I go in there and they sent me to this aisle. Like, I was looking online and I was like, okay, that's the one I want because it was like on sale. They sent me to this aisle, and in that aisle was vacuum cleaners. And I'm like, I don't need a vacuum cleaner. I need a deep fryer. That's why I came here. So then I'm like, okay, whatever. So I just go and look for it myself. The one that they had, on sale, it was there, but it was not marked as on sale. So I took it up to their their platform and showed them on their website, and I said, this is the same barcode number, it's the same everything, you just don't have it marked on sale. So I just want to make sure that I get the right price for it or whatever. And so that was a total fiasco getting that. And then I get the deep fryer home and fill it up with oil, and then they're like, I start the thing and the element doesn't work at all. The element doesn't work. Like, it was plugged in. Everything was like, I double checked everything as far as like assembly and everything, and it never worked. And I was just like, okay, but how do I return this now? Now I've poured all this oil in it, right? Like, I poured a whole, like, you have to put almost a gallon of it in there. Well, I think that's what it is, right? Like, almost a gallon of it in there to like, and it's oil. It's not like you can just...
Tell them it came pre-lubed from the factory.
So, anyway, I have many stories about Target. That's just the last one that it was. And since then, that was before I moved to Gainesville, so I don't know exactly what year that was, but I haven't shopped at Target since. Like I said, it's just always a stupid story. Like, you just can't make it up. Like, that kind of a story about Target, which is why I don't go there. So I didn't need the the boycott or anything. But this story to me just seems like a setup. What do you think?
It's just, I don't understand why people care too much about what another person does, even if it's allegedly provocative. Like, if I'm in the Target and someone's like causing a scene, I just think it's free entertainment personally.
Yeah.
Like, the only time I would be personally bothered by someone's outburst is if they physically touched me or physically messed with my property. Other than that, I don't care what that person does. They can go about their business. I'm not. Mm-hmm. The problem with me, almost, I think, is I just don't really get offended, honestly.
Right.
And it's like, and when there's like quote unquote blackface involved, like, people are gonna get mad hearing about that, call me racially insensitive or whatever, a sympathizer. Like, people just lose their minds too easily over really just trivial things.
Well, it was, one thing that was funny was, like, back in the day, and, one of the things that I have watched before was America's Next Top Model, and Tyra did a show, and it was having the models change their ethnicities, and in some they effectively had to do, like, a blackface, or I think, like, one of the white models, became Indian. That was her whatever, like, role, and so, like, that back then, and this is 2013 probably, that was never really talked about. That was never really discussed. It was never really a problem because people saw it as, like, okay, they're celebrating ethnicities, Now, I'm not saying this lady, if this whole thing is real, I'm not saying this is what this lady was doing, obviously. It doesn't sound like she was doing that. It sounds like she was trying to make a scene and make a statement. if this is indeed true, and why she chose to do, like, blackface, if that's indeed what she was doing, instead of, because she was asking about pride stuff, like, maybe like putting on some, like, tons of rainbows, or like, something like really, really weird, or walking into the store naked, like that kind of thing, because, that's what they were doing. That's what Bud Light was sponsoring, was, riding around on bikes in Toronto naked in front of kids at a Pride festival. That kind of, like, if that's what she did, like, it would make more sense, but just to do blackface for I don't know what reason, and rummage around the store and, like, yell at people, again, it just seems like a setup. But again, I guess the central point of this was, that kind of thing with ethnicities and whatnot, like, was celebrated. I mean, how many, why would, people were getting upset that kids were dressing up as, like, Jasmine, like, from Aladdin for Halloween. Like, oh, your kid's white and therefore shouldn't dress up as Jasmine? I don't understand the outrage of people, and why, they think it's insensitive, like, to do this kind of specific thing. Again, don't know what this lady's motive was, and it seems very strange, like I said, to do this. So I'm not projecting that thought on this woman. I'm projecting the thought onto, like, I don't understand why it's a big deal, and it sounds like you don't really either.
I mean, it's not even confirmed if it's the intention is even blackface or not, because you said it looks like dark brown, like.
Yeah. Okay. Vlog wanted us to cover this story. Funder of anti-child trafficking film Sound of Freedom charged with accessory to child kidnapping.
Who?
So this guy... So Sound of Freedom is a film, and it's something that, it was like number one on the box office for a few weeks, I think. And it was a film that talked about child trafficking, and, well, human trafficking in general. And I think Jim Caviezel was in it, and he was somebody played, who did he play? He played the main character, Tim Ballard. So, like, it was like basically an anti human trafficking film. And so this article's title is saying one of the funders of that film was charged with accessory to child kidnapping. And so it's not a very long article, but it basically says, well, I'll read the first part of it and then read the last part of it, because the middle part of it's just about, like, introducing the film and everything. So, a man who helped fund a film about rescuing children from human trafficking has been charged with accessory to child kidnapping. On July 23rd, Fabian Marta was arrested by the St. Louis Metropolitan Police and charged with accessory to child kidnapping over an incident that allegedly occurred on July 21st. According to Missouri court records viewed by E! News, he was released on his own recognizance, and the next hearing is set for August 28th. No other details on the case have been shared. So then, like I said, it kind of goes into the, okay, lawyer says it's unfounded, and then it talks about the movie. And then, the article doesn't say exactly what it's for. There's a lot of accusations that could happen here. But what I would say is, I don't know that if it was, like, an actual very strong human trafficking case, that he would be released on his own recognizance.
No, there's not a lot of like. I don't really like to comment on something like this because there's not like the article said. There's not really any details. Like human trafficking, it can cover a wide variety of things, and it says he was an accessory. You know, it could possibly be he picked up a friend's child who was supposed to be with the mother because there was a custody arrangement that was violated. It could be something, you know, benign like that. It could be something more. Like I said, there's just no details to discuss in the article.
Right. I mean, a lot of times they want to, you know, the media wants to paint a lot of, like, conservative types as, like, the, you know, oh, they're actually, you know, hypocrites, and look at them. And what it kind of does is it kind of shows a weakness in their own argument, because what they do is they paint the conservatives as, you know, hypocrites and whatnot, but then in doing so they defend the actions by saying, you know, it's fine to do it, kind of almost an admission of it's fine to do it. And so this being news at all is a little bit telling, because it's like...
Yeah, it's not news. There's no details.
Yeah, like...
There's not even... it doesn't even say what happened.
Right. It just says, oh, this is the charges. And they had to go and dig out, you know, the charges from the court case or whatever, from the records. So, you know... this happens a lot. All right. One more that Mog wanted us to cover, and then we're gonna get into
Trump?
We're gonna get into Texas first, actually. We're gonna get into Texas. The Texas abortion laws.
Okay.
But this is from Kraft Heinz volumes sink as consumers push back on higher prices. Kraft Heinz latest quarter shows shoppers are pushing back against higher prices on their favorite brands by buying less. The consumer staples company, whose brands include Velveeta, Oscar Mayer, and Jell-O, saw net sales increase 2.6% in its second quarter as it raised its prices, yet volumes decreased 7% year over year. The multinational said it expects volume trends to improve in the second half of 2023 and into 2024. The results highlight a bigger trend among consumer staple giants that increase prices amid elevated inflation. While the companies have largely managed to achieve their top and bottom line targets, the lack of volume growth suggests consumers are trading down to private labels or buying less overall. Coca-Cola's CEO also noticed that consumers globally were getting increasingly cost-conscious as inflation weighs on pocketbooks, and economists debate the likelihood of a recession ahead. They're looking for value and stocking up on items on sale, said CEO during the company's second quarter earnings call. We have seen some willingness to switch to private label brands in certain categories. Across the sector, consumers are increasingly cost-conscious, he added. So, again, I would say that this article is very telling of what's kind of happening with the economy. It's kind of an admission, like, there's something going on. And you're going to want to start paying attention to it, I think. If you're not, you know, try to decrease your spending, try to pull back, stock up when you can on, you know, items, because, you know, it's just going to, I think this is kind of an admission that it's going to keep getting worse.
And heckaroonie, if you have the yard space, you know, try to get chickens, perhaps, for eggs, and plant your own vegetables, like if you have enough room for it in the backyard, if you have a backyard. Or even if you live in an apartment, you could possibly set up something, like if you have an outdoor patio balcony, you can set up some fruits and vegetables out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing about this is, you want to try to acquire skills, and you want to try to, you know, become a little bit more self-sufficient if you can. get a little bit off the grid. Do what you can. This is not to say that doomsday is around the corner or anything. It's just.
I mean, I disagree with that personally. I think doomsday is around the corner in the next couple years.
Yeah, I think they're gonna get through 2024, and then I think some interesting things are going to start to happen.
I talked about it on the last show, but I just find it funny these egghead economists are talking about recession when that's a meaningless term. Like, as I said before on the last stream, infinite growth is not possible. There is going to be downward growth. That's natural. That's supposed to happen in a population.
Mm-hmm.
Like, with the real issue is cost of living is completely out of control, and a real issue, I don't know about your area, but a real issue in my area is HOAs. They are inflating astronomically. My HOA fees right now are $550, and in another community not too far, a month, by the way, not a quarter, a month.
Right.
And then in another, it used to be calculated generally by a quarter, but another community not too far away, they're $700 a month.
Mm-hmm.
They just raised it, and they raise it like several times a year. It's just outrageous, especially with the increase of property tax, insurance costs. Even if you own a home, you can be just forced out.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's pretty much you have a second mortgage now with all these extra fees added on. Yeah. Not to mention the food increases, utility increases. It's like I said, we are nearing total economic collapse right now.
Oh, I mean, especially because it's just unfettered, right? Like, it's just unfettered.
And no one in DC is helping. Biden's not helping. No politicians are really talking about the crisis at hand right now.
I don't know. Biden's saying it's great,
The economy. I've also heard, people on Reddit, people talking about Biden fixed the economy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like that. That's politics nowadays. You just say whatever you want about your side. They're great, and that's fact now. Apparently.
Yeah, and as I mentioned a few times, I had, shortly before I went to Gainesville to start working, they increased my rent by over 30%, right? Where I was living. I loved that place, like where I lived. And then they were like, oh, here's your 30%. And I actually, it's funny because I emailed them and I said, listen, I just want to make sure this is right because, in the past you've increased my rent, $20-$30, whatever. Okay. You want to increase my rent by over 30%. And that was the discounted rate, right? Like that was, we're actually renting this place out for like, in addition, on top of that, an additional 10%. But we were giving you the renewal for that, the renewal offer because you have lived here. And I'm like, okay, I had to make sure that there wasn't a typo because, and the thing is like, okay, I was able to tank that, but there's a lot of people that are not able to tank that, okay? Like, and you just can't do that to people that are in dire straits, right? Like, a lot of people, most people, I would say that's their major expense. That's their, rent is their major expense. And so that's not, pay an extra $10 a month, like, on a phone bill or something like that. That is, you either pay it or you get evicted, right? Like, you either pay it or you go out on the streets.
And good luck finding another place to rent if you have an eviction on your record.
Exactly. And so, when you start seeing that, you can blame some of it on greed, but a lot of it, is a raise in taxes. A lot of it is land being, gobbled up by major corporations. Things like this that are kind of inflating it further, not to mention, all the Trumpflation that we got in 2020 based on the, the COVID relief bills. So you got what, 30... all said and done, what was it, or 1,200, 600 $1,400. So $3,200 if you got the maximum out of that. Where's that getting you now, right? Not to mention all the pork barrel spending that was also in that bill. So, you know, you got to ask, like, how are people, you know, you obviously can cut back on, you know, your goods, and you can, you know, you can get the cheaper, you know, ketchup and the cheaper macaroni and cheese and whatnot. But at a certain point, you know, that extra $10 that you're saving every time you go to the grocery store, that doesn't become enough to offset everything else that's happening, right, in your life. And so I do think we're going to start seeing a lot of ruin.
I mean, there's already shanty towns in California.
Yeah, well,
I mean, I'm not even joking about that. There are little shanty towns.
Yeah, I mean, like little tent villages. Absolutely.
Not even, I can show you even more. There's not even just like tents, too. It's just like hobbled together structures as well. It literally looks like a third world country in parts of this country.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, that's not to say that
But we have hundreds of billions of dollars to give to Ukraine.
Well, we have to save democracy, right? I mean, you know, or something. Give a corrupt country a bunch of money so that we can save democracy that doesn't even enforce their own democracy.
That's hilarious. There is a Russian ad, and people were poking fun out of it, how ridiculous it was. It was like they made it look like it was a German ad, and just the German military coming to a family home and just taking everything of value, clearing out the house, just hanging up a picture of Zelensky. And the point of the ad was about your government, the country of Germany, giving billions of euros to Ukraine. And people are making fun of it, but, you know, they take it too literally. If you look at it, there's truthfully, for a country like America, we give out hundreds of billions of dollars of aid, but our industry's dead. There are shanty towns going up. Our people are in dire straits, and all this money to Ukraine, the ad is spot on, really. Mm-hmm. I don't know why people are making fun of it. It's because they're just brainwashed to support Ukraine, support the democracy that led to the destruction of their industry. It's completely ridiculous.
Yeah. You know, I mean, the thing is with whatever the government spends its money on, you know, you're always going to have those at, you know, the bottom of society, unfortunately, that are going to be in these dire straits situations. And so you are, you know, that's not going to go away regardless of what the government does. But that being said, when it starts to grow to an exponential level, when you start to see, you know, as you mentioned, shanty towns, when this grows beyond, you know, isolated incidents or even an isolated area, and it grows to, this is commonplace, you know, even in downtrodden areas, that's when you really start to, you know, I would say get an awareness. But is the awareness too late, do you think? Is the awareness of this happening just too late? And
it's never too late, Caster, because the thing is, the people are going to have enough, and there's going to be a massive revolt in the country. Like I said, the federal government is going to collapse in the next couple of years. I've said before, 2024 is the last election. Mm-hmm. I've said before on many earlier streams, but the United States, if you want to look at the future of the United States of America, look at the Syrian civil war. That's what this country is going to look like. It's going to be multiple factions just fighting against each other, and the American government besieged in major cities like DC and New York.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of like, I don't think that the world will continue.
So I want to say, among the younger people, the new American dream is to leave the country and go to someplace cheaper. Like, I have a friend known for many years, for about 10 years, he moved to the Philippines.
Yeah.
And that's a dream a lot of other younger Americans have, is just move cheaper countries.
I also have a friend that he hasn't moved there yet, but he visits there like 3 or 4 times a year, and he said, you know, you can go there. It doesn't take very much money. They treat you very well, and he said it's like a wonderful place for him to live. And, you know, luckily his profession allows him to kind of work from there and, you know, continue to bring in an income. But absolutely, I mean, that's the thing, is it's getting exclusive, you know, to you know, and people are gonna stop enjoying life as much too. Like, if you just can't do things, if you can't afford to do things, you know, I mean, it goes beyond, you know, just cutting back and, you know, buying generic dish detergent instead of, you know, Dawn or whatever. It goes beyond that, you know, because once that savings comes to an end and you're still struggling, you know, then you have to start cutting into the things that you enjoy in life, and that creates a misery index. And I think that we're already kind of there, you know, where there's not much of that left to go, because I think a lot of, you know, people are going to really cut back, you know, especially when it approaches the middle class and encroaches on that. You know, is 55,000, you know, enough anymore to support a family? No, but that's a pretty common wage. You know what I mean? So, you know, if you can't take that, you know, yearly vacation because you can't even, you know, get ahead enough to, you know, out in front of your bills, that's a big deal for a lot of people. And so it just makes that misery index go up. All right. I was going to talk about this Twitter story, but I think we'll just go to Texas instead. Texas abortion bans are back in place after state appeals judge's order, from NPR. The Texas Attorney General's office has filed an appeal with the state Supreme Court, effectively blocking a judge's hours-old order that temporarily lifted a ban on emergency abortions. A day earlier, a Texas district judge had ruled in favor of a group of women and doctors who sued the state over medical exceptions in its abortion laws. The women argued that medical exceptions in the state's abortion bans lack clarity, putting patients in danger during medically complicated pregnancies. The appeal blocks the judge's ruling in favor of the patients and doctors for now, kicking the decision to the all-Republican state Supreme Court. Ooh. Texas pro-life laws are in full effect, the Attorney General's office said in a press release on Saturday. This judge's ruling is not. In her ruling, Travis County District Judge Jessica Mangrum, which, by the way, I've lived in Travis County before, wrote that uncertainty regarding the scope of the medical exception and the related threat of enforcement of Texas abortion bans creates a risk that doctors will have no choice but to bar or delay the provision of abortion care to pregnant persons. There's that term, pregnant persons. Sorry, women, you don't exist. In Texas, for whom an abortion would prevent or alleviate a risk of death or risk to their health, for fear of liability under Texas's abortion bans. The judge had issued a temporary injunction prohibiting the laws from being enforced against healthcare professionals who provide abortions in emergency medical situations based on their good faith judgment. The decision followed an emotional hearing last month in which several women described struggling to navigate emergency medical decisions about pregnancies that doctors said endangered their health. The lawsuit on behalf of 13 patients and 2 doctors was filed earlier this year. Then it also talks about like certain, I guess, exceptions in the law that would, somebody that, or a fetus that has a terminal illness may have to be carried to term because it's not clear in the law. So I wanted to cover this a little bit because this law, well, as somebody who is pro-choice, I obviously disagree with the law itself. But it's in Texas, and it sounds like the Republicans want to kind of I guess, show their big dick energy, we'll say, and show that they mean business when it comes to abortion. And so they're doing the whole huff and puff your chest out, and we're not going to let you have one. So I want to get your thoughts on whether you think this is a good strategy and what repercussions, if any, we're going to see from this.
To repercussions to the GOP, or to the women, or to both?
I would say more to the GOP, but if you want to talk about the women, that's fine.
Oh, there's repercussions. So I'll try to touch base a little bit here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. I'm having a Mitch McConnell moment. Could you say the question again, the first part, aside from repercussions?
Sure. So I wanted to. So the question,
you're talking about if this was a winning or losing strategy,
right? If the strategy itself, and then what repercussions, if any.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, the strategy in itself is losing, because many people, even the Republic side, they're pro-choice. It's not. This is only really popular among the really religious right. They do not have the majority in the country, and over time, especially in Texas, as years go by, demographics are going to change, and eventually these laws will be repealed, and it's going to go back to the way it was before. So this Republicans doing this, it wins them nothing in the end. It just alienates independent voters from them.
Mm-hmm.
And as for repercussions for women, I discussed repercussions for GOP. But for women, there's just going to be a bit more misery for them personally. The trauma of having to carry a non-viable fetus to term, potential complications from infection and death, you'll see that rise.
Mm-hmm.
And even in restrictions for abortion, you'll just see more unwanted children in society. You'll just see more crime and poverty go up.
Yeah.
It's just I wouldn't say I'm pro-choice. Like, I would describe myself as pro-abortion, because in my mind, abortion is murder. Well, abortion is killing of an unborn child. I wouldn't say murder, because murder has to do with lawfulness and whatnot, but it is killing of an unborn child. However, that killing, it does not disrupt society as a whole, compared to murdering your boss would disrupt society.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's my argument for it. It does not disturb the social order. And it also keeps poverty down and other crime, and just the trauma of being an unwanted child to a mother in poverty.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the Republicans actually missed that point, because the thing is again, we've said this so many times, I mean, who is getting abortions? And when we look at the statistics of who gets them, it's not even close. It's 90% single women that can't afford, in general, to have a child. And so the Republicans tend to use a lot of, like, very strange arguments. Like, for instance, they go back and say that the founder of Planned Parenthood was racist, and that may be true. I haven't researched, I can't remember her name at the moment, but I haven't researched her. But the thing is that the reason that they say she was racist is because they put a lot of these abortion clinics and Planned Parenthood clinics in, minority neighborhoods, primarily. The thing, though, is that you have to, it's kind of a good business decision to go to a place where your customers are going to be, right? Mm-hmm. And so, unfortunately, who are going to have more unwanted children? Poor people. And that tends to be in more minority areas. And when I looked up the abortion, like, before I had looked it up to see how much it was, an abortion is, like, I was thinking, okay, abortion's probably $5-6 grand. You can get one for, like, an actual certified one. I don't know if you'd even call it certified, but, like, one that goes through, a medical doctor for less than $1,000 in some cases, right? So, most people, even poorer people, would have access to, $1,000. But are they going to have access to, years and years and years of financial support that they're going to have to give to that child? And a lot of times the answer is no, or the answer is they don't know where to look. So, for me, I would rather not have somebody on the government dollar that is going to, essentially just use the system when they can't afford it. And so, I think abortion is a tragedy. It's as you said, not a murder because that's a legally defined term, but a killing. And the thing is, it should be a tragedy, and it should be a very, it should be a choice that you're not happy to make, right? But at the same time, it should be a choice. And I just feel like the Republicans they're standing on this issue, and they just don't want to budge off of this issue. And they have so many other issues that are winning issues for them, for instance, the school stuff, the woke school stuff, most of the country's on board. The trans athletes, transgender women athletes, like most of the country's on board with them as far as that goes. And so it's issues like this that I think, if we go back to kind of the top of the show and we look at the polls, and you have Biden sitting at a 60% disapproval, 58% disapproval, and yet he's not losing to any margin, any significant margin to any of the Republican candidates at the moment, right? Like, these are people that don't like Biden, but that doesn't translate into votes against Biden, because they have to look at the Republicans and say, well, there's a better alternative. I mean, I would be in that 60% that would disapprove of Biden. Doesn't mean I'm going to go vote for his opponent, whoever that happens to be. So, it's, to me, it's just a losing issue that I don't see going anywhere for the Republicans. And
I also, in terms of abortion, I really dislike the Republican hypocrisy, because if you want to completely forbid abortion, I would be okay with that if you provide strong social services and actually help lift people out of poverty. But Republicans don't want to do that.
mm-hmm.
They just want to leave the child and mother. They just want to fend for themselves, and just and just especially their attitude towards finances in general. Like, I see a lot of Republicans mock the idea of $15 an hour, when nowadays in 2023, $15 an hour, that's a slave wage.
Yeah, it's bad.
It's nothing.
Like, you better hope you live in the foothills of Montana, because if you don't, $15 an hour won't even get you.
In our areas, that will get you a nice cardboard box by a dumpster,
Yeah.
And it's weird. It's weird. They also, now the student loan issue, there's a ton of nuance to this. I won't go into too much of detail, but I find it funny how Republicans are so against forgiveness, yet they were okay with PPE loans being completely forgiven for businesses. But when something actually might help out the working class a bit, they're just completely against it. There's no empathy, sympathy either, because a lot of students too, they are completely brainwashed day one by society to go to college to be a loser, be nothing.
Oh yeah, and we've talked about that many times. Is the public school system sending people to college and being very you either go to college or you're a loser. That's the bread and butter of their argument. But what's kind of more interesting about it is that the thing about Republicans is they never really have to answer that question because that question never comes up. That even their detractors, will always say it's women's rights, blah blah blah, instead of saying and so Republicans don't have to defend the fact that to avoid most abortions, all you have to do is build the family, right? You have to make
promote,
sure, yeah, because
build the communities, promote family values.
Exactly. I mean, that's what you have to do to prevent most abortions. And then, women will respect themselves. They won't give themselves up, for sex. And men will, be more disciplined in knowing what the consequences of sex could be. And they don't do that. The Republicans never have to address that question because none of their detractors want to talk about it. And so I get really frustrated with both sides because they're just arguing in a circle of it's women's rights, it's murder, Republicans don't want abortions, even mother's health, and only we do. It's just a big circular argument that never goes anywhere. And I would think that most of the country by default is going to be like, okay, like Republicans sound a lot more stupid on this issue than the Democrats do, because the Democrats are just like, the Democrats have this like wide net essentially of acceptable views for this particular viewpoint, whereas the Republicans are, it's murder, that's it, like, and I think that doesn't speak well for them. We'll get to the last topic tonight, which is circling back to Donald Trump. This article is from ABC News. Trump lawyer welcomes Pence testifying in January 6th trial. Won't say if Trump will too. So Trump's lawyer and Stephanopoulos, I think, or maybe, I don't know. Stephanopoulos had an interview, and I guess it was this like testy interview where he was interviewing him, and just to cover this, I read this article pre-stream, but just to cover it real fast because I want to make sure we get out here on time. It's basically saying that it was this testy interview, and they want Pence to kind of testify in the. They want Pence to testify because they think that they can cross-examine him. Like, Pence is, saying, like, it's kind of wrong and whatnot, like, of what Donald Trump did. And there's this long indictment. And so you kind of said earlier that you think it's going to end in a mistrial. Like, all of these are going to end in a mistrial. Because you're going to have just, like, a hung jury every time. I think Pence, and now I feel kind of stupid for not knowing this, but Pence has announced that he's running for president. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. I was pretty sure he did, but I wanted to verify because do you think that Pence would have even an additional, like, motivation to try to testify in this, or do you think he would have a motivation to stay out of it?
I really don't know. I mean, he could have potentially been offered something for testimony. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's hard to answer such a question because I don't really personally know Mike Pence.
Mm-hmm. And his different
and his motive, what motivates him, what his potential motives might be.
Do you think that like Trump gets stronger with like every indictment and every like thing that...
I personally feel he does, because I feel like with every new indictment, I feel it incites his base on the Republican side more and more. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe even more independent people might see it as political persecution and as a witch hunt.
Mm-hmm. Um,
Like, honestly, if I were in charge of the Democratic Party, like the strategy I would try to employ would be beat Trump in policy. Don't try to put him in jail. That would be my strategy for it.
why do you think they don't want to do that, though? I mean, I don't think it's like a fear of it. Do you think it's anything like that, or do you think it's like just this is the way they wanna deal with him? Do you think it's just like a blind type of rage where they just see him and they just want to cover it up?
I personally feel it is just like a kind of
Mm-hmm.
like tribalism. Like, he is an outsider. He tried to stir the pot up, get rid of him.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I kind of feel it is.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, really, at the end of the day, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, they're very similar. Like, in my mind, they're just like, they're yin and yang. They kind of, I feel like they're just both controlled opposition to each other because they both sell out the corporate interests and don't have the interests of American people in mind.
When you say both, you mean
Both, what do you mean? Both sell out the corporate interest. Like, I don't feel any party truly has the
oh, both parties. I'm sorry, I didn't know if you meant people, like
yeah,
individuals. Okay.
no, the Republican Democratic Party as a whole unit.
Yeah. Well, of course. I mean, it's so funny because I always bring up, what the DNC did to Bernie, right? I mean, you kind of saw, like, Bernie had an inkling, like, even an inkling, like, he'd be out of control for the DNC. And I just remember that one debate where the first thing they did was they lined up like, Bernie was leading, finally took the lead over Biden in 2020. And it was, like, for the first time. And they lined everybody up and they all took a shot at Bernie. Like, I don't know how many candidates were on stage, but it was nutty, like, what they did. And, they kind of shafted him in 2016 as well.
Yeah, the DNC, they don't want the status quo to change.
Right. So, my thing is always, like, that's all you have to do, really, to look at, if you want to look at politics on a scale, like, and what was it, Donna Brazile, that, like, leaked, questions to Hillary Clinton, for the debate. And, you just kind of look at what the DNC has done with their candidates, and that kind of tells the story, doesn't it?
And I also like to point out again that the DNC and GOP, they're private organizations. They are not government
Mm-hmm.
entities. They can do there's no account. They can do whatever they want. There doesn't have to be, even if Bernie won a primary, the DNC could be, no, Biden's our nominee, get lost.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I do react to the chat. We do. Starlight is not in the chat, so I will read the questions to him as it comes in. So we have a new person in chat, Blue Brother. He's saying he's drunk and he's from Germany, and he senses our political views are aligning with each other. And then he says, do these two react to the chat, or are they just debating and I'm just listening? Well, we're probably not doing too much debating tonight, because
We did a little bit kind of earlier, like,
Yeah.
I was questioning you about, like, certain beliefs and this and that, just try to pick your mind a little bit.
Most of the topics tonight were pretty agreeable on, but there are some topics, when it comes to, like, finances and whatnot, that I think we probably disagree on.
Well, how so disagreement on finances, like, in what regard?
Well, I don't think
like what would, in your opinion, what do you think a big disagreement between us would be?
Well, I don't know how much government intervention you believe in for a financial, in domestic financial involvement would be. So how much financial power the government should have internally, and what intervention they should do on behalf of citizens.
Well, personally, like I'm adherent of a mixed economy personally. Like I'm strong on family business.
Mm-hmm.
However, when it comes to large multinational corporations, I don't have any love for them. If I were in charge of a government, I would keep them in line personally.
Yeah, and I think
And
that
I do personally, as myself, I do personally believe in strong social services.
yeah.
I do believe you should try to help lift people out of poverty. I think it would be beneficial in the long run. It would bring down crime and other societal ills.
Mm-hmm. And I'm probably one for a little bit less government intervention on that, and more, I would say, incentives, rather, for like community building and having that done on a private level. And because my definition of government has always been a neutral arbiter to keep order within a society. So that's my definition of what I would want government to do. So any place that government doesn't have power, or doesn't need power, it shouldn't be given it, in my opinion. So yeah, we probably could have a debate eventually on that, and be able to ask each other questions and whatnot. I think that would be fun. So maybe we'll schedule that for the future. Maybe
Well, I think we do. I think the most important thing, though, in an economy and in a country, I think we both agree on this, is I'm a big proponent of isolationism and
Mm-hmm.
keeping industry within the country and not selling out to cheap labor to other countries, like
Yeah.
China, how it happened here.
And our government does tend to like to do that a lot. So,
And in case if
even
anyone
private
out there,
businesses too. Go ahead.
and if anyone's out there is wondering, like what I mean by isolationism is I mean staying out of foreign conflicts and wars and whatnot. I am a proponent of trading excess resources for stuff we might not produce much of ourselves. So I am a proponent of international trade, just
Yeah.
on a neutral level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, kind of like Japan was, pre-World War II for most of their era. They were very internalized, a very internalized country that nobody really interacted with, and then they grew out of that and really technologically advanced in the 30s. Anyway, that's the show for y'all tonight. So thanks everybody for being here. I appreciate it. Thanks, Mog.
Oh, did you tell the new guy that you can ask a question with exclamation point Q?
I didn't. I think the or maybe the bot didn't. Did the bot? I think the bot typed. Yeah, but the bot says that occasionally. So David Packman, gotcha. I've listened to him a couple times, but not my cup of tea. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. I really do appreciate it. I do have to get out of here. Got somewhere to be tonight, but
yeah, me and Casper got to go to Target.
yeah, we are going to Target, and we're putting on blackface to go shop there and yell at people. But
Oh, you're canceled now, Casper.
I know. That's okay. But anyway, y'all, thank you so much for joining us tonight. You have any final words for anyone out there?
Thank you, everyone. I greatly enjoyed this show personally, and we'll hope to see you again on the next one. Good night, everybody.
All right, have a great night. We'll see you next